Hi, this is Kelsey Cooper, and I'm the host for Disabled Birth Stories podcast. I hope those in the disabled community can enjoy these stories of bringing beautiful babies into the world and the journey along the way. I hope this podcast helps you feel seen, heard, empowered, and capable, no matter your journey to being a parent. I hope those who are able-bodied would listen to empathize with and support their disabled family member, friend, acquaintance, or random stranger. Thank you for listening, and feel free to email me if you have any questions or would like to be featured on the podcast at disabledbirthstories@gmail.com. Thanks for joining us today. After listening to this episode, please remember to rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please also check the description for our social media links and the link to our merch store. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult your medical providers for all of your healthcare needs. Also, the views and opinions expressed by the guests are not necessarily the views and opinions of the host and vice versa. Hi, today I'm here with Jillian, and she's going to tell her story today. Jillian, can you start by introducing yourself?
I'm Jillian Swartfager. I'm 30 years old, and I have 3 kids. I have mild cerebral palsy.
Since cerebral palsy affects everyone a little differently, can you explain how it affects you and how it affects your life, like day-to-day life?
So mine being mild, it affects me with both my legs and then my left arm. So my left arm is weaker than my right. Like, my right is pretty dominant. I do everything when it comes to holding my kids, to doing the dishes, and like using the bathroom. Everything is my right arm. Like, you can tell. I don't know. That, like, I can't flip my right. Like, I can flip my right all the way. I cannot flip my left. So
Pronation and supination, turning the wrist.
Very tight muscles. I have very tight muscles. When I was 8, I had my Achilles lengthened, and then when I was 13, I had my groin lengthened for more. They wanted to get as much, my doctor wanted to get as much growth from my growth plate as they could, so I had my groin lengthened. And then with my third, we moved a few times, and I had groin lengthening surgery when I was 13. My groins with each pregnancy had gotten progressively worse. With my middle, I felt I had I was also working with her, so it was just different. I worked part-time with my middle, so I was always moving my body because I was working, and then I would come home and take care of my son. So I was always on the go when I was pregnant with her. So I had groin, round ligament pain all the time. And then with my last and final baby, it was from the get-go. Like, right when I found out that I was pregnant, it was groin ligament pain all the time. From the time that I found that I was pregnant to the time that I gave birth to her. It was the most painful and excruciating thing I had. There were multiple days that I would lay on my floor in my house and just cry, and my husband would stretch me. Like, he would stretch me because the round ligament and the groin pain was just so painful. I literally I would tell him all the time, I'm never doing this again. I don't want to do this again. And he would I remember him just petting my hair, and like, he would tell me, you don't have to do this again. This is like the last, like, I want to say 2 months of my pregnancy were so bad. My son, like, would just come up to me, and he literally just lift my belly. My son, he was 8, and he would just lift my belly so that I would get a little bit of relief, because he knew that she just turned 2, so I had a 2-year-old that I was taking care of too, and it was just a lot of heavy, and we had moved 3 times. So I had moved from Alaska, and then we stayed with my parents for 2 weeks, and then we had California, we moved to Nevada, and then in Nevada, we lived in a hotel because there wasn't any ADA housing available. So I had to live in a hotel for 3 months. And then from there, I moved into a 2-story house because the housing, that's a whole nother story. So now I have a 2-story house with a 9-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, which, I mean, it isn't bad now. But when I was pregnant, trying to walk up and down the stairs was lots of pain. But I lived in 2-story house, except for my middle daughter. With my son, we had a 2-story house when I was pregnant with him, so it wasn't that big of a deal then. But that was, fresh new baby,
Right.
pregnancy baby.
So this was Nevada, and so it was, new hospital, new doctor as well. Were you able to do the surgery like you planned this time, or what happened there?
Actually, on top of that, my husband and I decided that we were done having kids. So since I have a C-section, I actually got a tubal ligation when I was in the operating room. Because all my doctors have, and for me physically, have only recommended 3 or 4 babies would be stretching it for me. And all my doctors have said that. Like my first Dr. Matharo, even my Dr. Rosenfeld, my orthopedic surgeon, said, 3 babies is a lot. 4 would be pushing it for you. And that was when I was 16. And then my first OB said the same thing. And then my second OB said the same thing. And then this OB was like, I agree with all of your previous, 4 would be pushing it. So I decided to get a tubal ligation because I was like, okay, it's for me, safety wise, I need to and my husband was also saying, I never want to see you in that much pain again. Like my 3rd pregnancy broke him. He didn't want to see me in that much pain again. It was a lot, and I never wanted to do that again. I'm happy with the family that we have. We have a beautiful, gorgeous family, so we're very happy. But we decided to get I decided to get a tubal ligation. So after everything happened, she agreed, and she was very happy that I did, because when I actually went into labor in the operating room, literally the nurse had put the catheter in, and he looks and he's like, she's peeing, but it's coming out. So he actually thought he put my catheter in my bladder and not in he thought he put my catheter somewhere else and not in my bladder. And he was like, okay. And the nurse that had been there with me from the morning when I checked in, she was my nurse. She came over, and she was kind of talking to me because I was kind of getting a little nervous. And she's like, I can tell that you're nervous. And he was like, because he goes, oopsie. And she's like, what? So she's like, I'm gonna go check this out really fast. And there's a puddle of water on the floor. And he goes, I think I put our catheter in wrong. And she goes, can you feel it? And I was like, no, I can't feel you. And she was like, oh no, her water broke. So, and luckily with this hospital, they were really, they had my husband walk down to the operating room with me, and he just stood outside the operating room. There was like a little window that he could look into until they called him in. So he knew everything that was going on. He could actually see it this time, which was really interesting and cool for him, because that was the first time that he had actually been able to see the process before he walked in. He's just normally in to see, me strapped down and already open. He had never seen what goes into the whole process before. So afterwards, we were talking about, he goes, that was actually pretty cool that he was able to see that, because, and know that he's right there. So if anything did happen, he's right there, and I could see him too. Like, it was really nice to be able to see him. I was a little bit more I was way more comfortable with being able to see him.
That is nice. I've never heard that before. That's
Yeah, I never heard that before either. So shout out to Nellis Air Force Base Hospital, labor and delivery, because they are awesome. And then we had her. Everything was fine. The trouble for me wasn't anything bad until after she was out, which they did the same thing with my middle. So they put down the blue screen so I could see her come out, which was really cool. They took her over, got her tests. My husband, did his thing. And actually, no, not everything was cool. She had a lot of amniotic fluid in her system. She didn't come out screaming. So they did a lot of work. It was about, I want to say 5 minutes that they were getting fluid, before I heard my baby cry. That was frightening. And I'm yelling at him because I can't really turn, you're stuck to an operating table. You can't turn and see what's going on. So I'm yelling, what's going on? What's going on? And he's like, babe, it's okay. They're working on her. They're working on her. It seemed like it felt forever before she actually screamed, but it was probably 2 to 3 minutes. She just had a lot of fluid in her lungs, which was fine. They got it handled. And but I got to hold her. They put her, the nurse came with my husband. He sat back down and they actually put my baby on my chest. And I had skin to skin contact right away after she was all better. And she was already trying to suckle. She was trying to find my boobs. Nurse. And I was like, okay, this is not happening. I'm trying to, and my doctor, they put the blue thing back up because I was getting my tubal ligation done. And she's like, oh, I'm just trying to find your tubes to remove them. And I'm like, what? And she's like, you have so much scar tissue down there that I'm having trouble finding your right tube. So she was actually saying, I'm actually thankful that you have decided to do this, because if you didn't and you did have a fourth pregnancy, a fourth C-section would be very difficult on you. The recovery time would be extremely difficult. So in hindsight, hindsight is always 2020. So I'm very thankful and that's when I knew that I had made the right decision about getting a tubal done, was so that we could be able to have no more babies.
How was the recovery with her once, all the fluid and stuff got taken care of? How was your recovery and her recovery?
Her recovery was awesome. It was not she's an awesome baby. She's been my best baby. She slept through the night at 4 days old. As since then. But my recovery for this one was a little bit harder. I don't know why. Maybe it was because I had an additional surgery on top of it with the tubal. But my recovery has been a lot harder, maybe because I wasn't working or anything. I don't know, but this recovery was harder. I didn't bounce back as fast as I normally would have. Maybe that's having 3 babies.
Right.
So I don't know. I bounced back pretty quickly. I lost a lot of the baby weight with both of my other 2 fairly quickly. So still having a lot of extra baby weight this time is difficult for me, but that's a self-esteem, body conscious thing for me. And I'm learning to accept my new body still. It's been a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to accept the new body, but it's been difficult for me.
Were there any resources throughout your pregnancies that kind of helped you with, getting prepared, or any books or any research you did? Because I know you said your mom and others did research.
Yeah, that was the research that we did was mostly for C-sections and repeating C-sections, like what to expect with repeating C-sections, what to expect. So a lot of my research was um not geared towards necessarily research on how to take care of a baby, but research on how to, because I knew that I was going to have to do things a little bit different when it comes to taking care of a baby. Like I can't do all the things that normal mothers or parents should do. I can't do the same, like, I can't do this, I can't do that because I only have one really good arm. But, with yeah, all of our research was geared more towards C-sections and how recovery time for C-sections and how it affects my body. That was my mom's main was would, like, how would it affect her body and how would pregnancy affect her body, period. Like I couldn't wear my braces at all through my pregnancies because what I tried it with my first son and it like my balance was all off because I was so top heavy and braces. I don't know if you have ever like AFOs, you like lean back. So like I'm like my balance was completely off. I like my mom's like, "Why aren't you wearing your braces?" And I'm like, "Mom," because my husband had seen me and he's like, he goes, "Mom, she can't wear them. Like, she can't even balance on them." Because he was like, "You need to try wearing them. He's so encouraging about me wearing my braces and doing my stretches and all these things. And he was like, okay. Like, as my belly got bigger, I wore them at the beginning of my pregnancy with my son. And then as my belly got just bigger, and he goes, she put them on and she can't do it. Like, she cannot. Like, I was literally shaking when I put them on. And he was like, it's not safe for her to wear them right now. And she was like, okay. She goes, as long as you, like, know that, like, he goes, she was like, if he feels that it's not safe and you're not, like, he goes, I wouldn't want her walking up and down the stairs in them. And her balance is bad enough. I didn't wear them throughout any of my pregnancies just because the balance, and I just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger with each child. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to wear them at all. But I did wear a belly band with my last two. So that helped. Getting that belly up and away from the hip helped. So shout out to belly bands because they're awesome.
And you couldn't wear the AFOs. Did you just walk without any assistance, or was there like times where you had to use a wheelchair or walker?
No, fortunately, I'm so mild that I do not need to use any other assistance while walking, except for like when I go like places, like when I go to parks, I need assistance. Like we get a wheelchair when I go to Disneyland, or I've never been to Disneyland with kids, so I don't know how I'm gonna do. So I don't know. But like when I was growing up, we would always, after my siblings, grew up out of the stroller phase, we would get wheelchairs. So if I'm walking like long periods and I know it's going to be a rough walk, then yes, I will get assistance. But I don't really need, like, I've never needed assistance other than my AFOs slash brace. I call them braces. It's just, but yeah, I'm very, very, very lucky that I don't need more assistance when it comes to other than mobility, other than my braces.
And yours is CP Spastic. Do they have a like? Is yours considered diplegia or do you know? Is there a specific?
Right, but so I follow different CP organizations on Instagram, Facebook. You know, you look at all of them, and all of the diagrams don't really have tri. They have quad and they have like double or single. So they don't really try. So that's why I'm like, okay, but I've met people that are tri. So I'm like, I'm not a unicorn, but it's not talked about enough. Like, I don't understand why, because we are out there. Like, I've met a few people that are tri spastic. So I'm like, I don't understand why it's not talked about enough, or not even on the dang diagram. I don't get it.
That's just something I was curious about. So, but I loved hearing your stories, and I love that they're all, even though they were all, C-sections, they all, like, each baby has their own story.
And that's what, like, I love about my stories is, like, each of my babies is very the same, but very, very different. And I, you know, I try to tell people that, like, I I have two sister-in-laws. I was the first one to have a baby out of all of us, and there's 9 grandkids on my husband's side. Um, and both of them had all their kids vaginally. So they've always wondered about what a C-section is like. And I have 3 sisters, and 2 of them are wanting babies. So they're like, what's a C-section like? And so I'm always educating people about C-sections, and just, I'm not big in the disabled community just because I don't know many people that are in the disabled community. I know that's bad, but my parents have always kind of, raised me in the normal world. I did play, like, when I was younger, I did play baseball, and I did play, like, sports with people with disabilities. But since I've been older, like, I don't really have a lot of friends that are disabled. So if you want to be my friend and you're mom, I'll be your friend, or I'll talk to you, because a lot of people don't understand. Like, they say, like, a lot of my friends, they'll say they understand about, oh, my chronic back pain, but, like, it's not, or my groin is hurting. Like, yeah, I know that's weird to say, but, like, a disabled person might understand why your groin or why your Achilles is hurting, or, like, I can't do that because I only have one arm, or my legs are, being able to run after your kids sometimes is heartbreaking because I can't do it. That's also different too, is now we're in that transition. I mean, I know this isn't part of this, but also, like, transitioning from having babies to having kids going to school is also different. So we're in that new phase of, my husband and I, we're in that new phase of having children in school. And now I have to go to school and be around kids that don't know about disabilities. So education is so important because, they always are questioning, why do you talk? Why do you walk funny? Why do you do this? Or, they ask my son, why does your mom walk weird? Or why does she walk funny? And trying to explain that and be able to explain it to a 9-year-old to be able to explain it to his friends is somewhat difficult. So if anybody knows how to do that, please let me know.
Yeah, I think when because I have diplegic CP, and so when talking to younger kids, usually I say, that's just the way I was born, and that they stop asking for, a day or two, and then they'll come back and go, so what's wrong with you again? And so then, it's like a placeholder until I have to, like, figure out something else to say.
And then you need to try to figure out how to explain it in, like, terms that they'll understand. And remember, it's different and it's a new world. But I also want to be able to educate people. Like, there's not a lot of people in the disabled community that have a voice, number one. And number two, like, I'm also involved in the military community. So that's even a smaller amount of people that have disabilities in the military community that also educate and come from that background. And that's also a struggle to come, because there are people in the military community that do have disabilities, but a lot of the time it's the kids. It's not the parents that have disabilities. So that's also an aspect that I kind of go, hey, like, I raise questions to my husband. I'm like, babe, we got to talk about disabled adults in the military community, because that's also almost a unicorn as well. So having a disability is not always the best thing, but it's like, okay, We gotta get that awareness out. And I feel like all disability is like we don't have enough awareness right now, and that's something that we as a disabled community need to change, even though it's very difficult for us to do that because not all of us have the voice and can do that.
Yeah, and that was a big reason I wanted to do this podcast, because when my husband and I got married, we thought about having kids, and I was like, I have no idea how pregnancy would affect my body, how pregnancy affects other people with disabilities' bodies. Like, I know that, most of my doctors said it was possibility, but still I would have to live with being pregnant, and how would that do? And I found, podcasts of birth stories or blogs or whatever, and none of them really talked about disabilities. And I was like, I'll just start one myself.
I think fantastic. Like, it's just different. And is your husband disabled as well?
He has diplegic CB as well. Yeah,
that's different. Like with my husband, I hate using able-bodied terms, but he's an able-bodied person, so he kind of can pick up the slack for me not being able to do something like physically. Like there are times when I physically can't pick up our children. So about like 4 or 5 years old, sometimes they still want to be carried, and I just physically cannot do that. So he can, which I'm very lucky that I have him to be able to do that. And putting a baby down in the crib, I'm also short, but I don't also have 2 hands. So putting a baby down in the crib is also difficult.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I loved hearing all your stories.
Thank you for letting me jab, because I feel like I jabbed a lot.
No, it's fine. Thank you for listening, and feel free to email me if you have any questions or would like to be featured on the podcast at disabledbirthstories@gmail.com.